Thank you for being here.
Yep.
This year's theme is In Defense of Biodiversity, and we have an amazing day of speakers and presenters who will be talking about their work defending biodiversity and the ecosystems that are so vital to us. And I'm so excited today to get started with this panel. Personally, I think that environmental policy is most effective when it has a direct impact on local government. So I'm so excited to hear from this group of great leaders who work at the local level. Our moderator for our brunch today is Juanpablo Ramirez-Franco, an award-winning journalist covering climate change in the Midwest. He currently reports about drinking water, energy policy, environmental permitting, and wildlife for WBEZ, Chicago, and Grist magazine. And we love your work on our basis. His work has appeared on national shows like NPR's Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and Marketplace. So thank you, Juanpablo, for being here, and we'll have you introduce our lovely speakers.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. All right, let's get it rolling, huh? I think we're going to start off with Adam Bianchi, who serves as the superintendent of the forest preserves of Cook County, one of the largest urban forest preserve systems in the nation. Confirmed in July 2025, he brings nearly 20 years of public land management experience. His career includes significant work as a professional forester, environmental policy advisor across California, Michigan, and Colorado. His leadership has been recognized with honors including the U.S. Forest Service Chief Honor Award. Yeah, not good, right?
Great.
Up next, we have Margaret Frisbie. Margaret Frisbie is the executive director of Friends of the Chicago River. She leads efforts to transform the 156-mile river and its streams into a thriving natural ecosystem with public access for all. As a leading voice in the organization since 2005, she advocates for natural solutions that build climate resilience and protect biodiversity. She pioneered signature initiatives like in-stream habitat restoration and the Greater Chicago Watershed Alliance. Her work has earned her recognition as a river champion and a notable leader in the state in sustainability by Grist, Chicago. Margaret Frisbie. Up next is John Murray. John Murray served as executive director of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, MWRD, since November 2025. He possesses over 2 decades of experience in the water industry. During his tenure at MWRD, he has held key leadership roles, including Director of Maintenance and Operations and Section Head of the Stormwater Management. His expertise and dedication have been instrumental in advancing the MWRD's mission to protect the region's water and facilitate stormwater management initiatives. All right, last but not least, we got Carlos Ramirez-Rosa. Carlos Ramirez-Rosa is the General Superintendent and CEO of the Chicago Park District, overseeing the nation's largest park system. The 3-term alderman of Chicago's 35th Ward, which I call home, brings a decade of public leadership and coalition building experience. His co-led efforts to increase open space funding, and spearheading major infrastructure funding projects like the Logan Square redesign project, which I love. He has been recognized by Korean Chicago Business on its 20 in their 20s list and their 40 under 40s list. So back to back, kind of. You guys ready to get started? Perfect. This first is going to be sort of rapid fire. I'd like everybody to get a chance to answer it. So, Adam, we'll start with you.
Okay.
And let's talk about emerging threats to regional biodiversity. What are you most concerned about, and what emerging solutions do you hope?
Yeah, great question. I think that for me, it's not really looking at one threat. When I correctly look at the landscape, there's a lot of emerging threats that we deal with every single day when managing public land and ecosystems. Whether that's basic species, fragmentation, the need and desire of communities use these public spaces and ecosystems. There's a lot of social political challenges also that continue to threat when it comes to the government political space as well. And what really helps me think about where we're heading in the future and gives me hope is just that recognition that more and more I'm seeing, especially as a new person here to the Chicagoland area and seeing this conservation community, is there's a deep understanding that ecosystems and people are interconnected, and together, when we think about biodiversity, it sort of lifts everyone up, right? So the well-being of our communities, the people, these ecosystems, when we have a strength of biodiversity, they come hand in hand. And I've seen that, right? So with the way that we work collaboratively across with NGOs, other government partners, volunteers, you name it, I really think that the message is getting out there and will continue to help tell the story of why we need to continue to fight for these spaces and why our restoration efforts are needed. We've got continued challenges also with funding and staffing and other things, right? We're all dealing with that. So just I believe that the more we can tell the story, I think will help us in the long run.
Sure. Carlos, do you want to take a stab at that? And again, that question is, what keeps you up at night, but also what gives you hope?
Yeah. Well, it seems like every morning we wake up and learn of a new horror that is being, done to us by the Trump administration, whether it's attacking our ability to, clean our water, clean our air, and take care of people and nature. I'm not a scientist, environmental scientist. I'm a political scientist. And in political science, we're given a solution to a federal government, a national government that is moving in a direction, and that's municipalism. It's a framework that says that oftentimes the quickest solutions, the most responsive solutions, and the most sustainable solutions come at the local level. And so I feel very privileged and very happy to be able to work at the Chicago Park District, because at the local level, we are working on solutions every single day to protect our environment, to advance environmental justice, and to make sure that we're doing everything that we can at the local level to protect our natural environment. So some of you may have seen Dr. Laura Umick when you were signing in. She is the Dr. Dirt, and she works at the Chicago Park District. So while I'm a political scientist and not an environmental scientist, we have lots of environmental scientists, and we have lots of really great scientists doing lots of great work at the Chicago Park District, whether they're employed directly by the Park District or working in partnership with the Chicago Park District. So we're working with the Chicago Botanic Garden, University of Michigan, Flint, to look at alternatives to grass turf and how we can have more native plants, both in the Park District, but also in Chicagoans' lawns across the city. We're also working with the Shedd Aquarium and with other institutions to improve the health of our rivers, particularly in places where we have parks adjacent to our rivers. We also work a lot to inform the public because we're a public serving institution. So one of the things that we most recently did is we rolled out a policy on extreme heat and air quality. And now you can go on the Chicago Park District website to learn about what's the air quality, particularly when the air quality is dangerous, right? We want people to make smart, informed decisions to protect their health. And then we also launched Project Monarch. So the Park District, we're very happy to have over 2,000 acres of natural areas where we're doing things like prairie restoration, marsh land restoration, and we want Chicagoans to go out there and enjoy that space. But we also want Chicagoans to learn about how critical those spaces are to defend wildlife and to protect species that are in trouble, like the monarch butterfly. And so Project Monarch is a way that we distribute milkweed seed packets to Chicagoans, ask them to visit our natural area, ask them to plant some milkweed seeds, but also to just learn about that important role of the monarch butterfly and the important role that it plays as a pollinator. And then we're also so lucky to be able to partner with the Morgan Arboretum, which is working with Chicagoans so that they can create their own little arboretum in their neighborhood. And we just rolled out a policy to support our staff and to support the public as they seek to navigate that process. And we were just able to designate Palmer Square Park in Logan Square as one of those arboretums recognized by Morgan. So there's a lot of great work happening at the local level. And I think that when we are in moments like this, where we have a federal government that's moving in the opposite direction, yes, let's advocate at the federal level to, stop that harm, but let's also work at the local level to move in the opposite direction. And oftentimes we can more quickly move in the opposite direction, in the right direction at the local level, because local government is often so responsive to the needs of people in neighborhoods.
Great, thank you. Margaret, same question to you, which is, again, what are those big threats that you're seeing, but also what do you get excited about?
Yeah, so to start with, of course, with the Chicago-Calumet river system, we've already seen so much degradation, right? So you've got a river that has been highly engineered, It was reversed and 125 years ago, and that did a lot of good things. But it also had some major impacts, and it's maintained for navigation. Habitat is fragmented. There's, all of these complications that come from urbanization. Then you layer on the climate crisis and you have heat. And we've developed also policies for volunteers and whether or not it's safe to have contractors and volunteers in the field because of heat, because of, heavy, extreme weather that's, making it dangerous for people literally to be outside and breathe the air. So we have day after day new stressors, the federal government threatening the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, rollbacks in good policy. And so it feels very much like a burden. But I think every day we're empowered by the people in this room, the people that we work with. And I think it's been touched upon just even with what Adam and Carlos said, is that we have a culture of collaboration in the Chicago metropolitan area. And we have so many people who come together and think collectively and bring their skills and complement each other that we see real hope and change. I wake up in the morning, I hear the news, I go like this. I go to work, I sit up and I enjoy the day and feel like smart things are happening, offsetting it. And I think the Chicago-Calumet River system is a really good microcosm of a story because that river, when we were founded, and I'm going to give Rob Cassidy, who doesn't like it when I do it, but our founder was in the room. It was our friendless river in 1979 when we were founded, and it was friendless. And today there are so many partners, so many people, so many turtles, so many beavers, so many fish, so many miles of trail. We had the Chicago River Swim, also the founder of that is in the room. Like those are stories of hope that no one would ever have believed possible. So when we feel really great doom about both the federal government and the impact of the climate crisis, I think we just need to look at the work we're doing and how the impact we've had. And that tells you a story that even if nobody believes you, but the people in the room with you right now, someday they will believe you.
John, you're up next.
All right, so Carlos, we got to get together because I think that the idea of trying to capture stormwater where it falls in Chicago Park District and have mutually beneficial projects is actually a great thing for us to look at, see how we can do that. I think also when you mentioned the monarch butterfly, we have several of our facilities have monarch butterfly way station, and it's just a sure indicator that ecosystem improvements are needed. 80 to 90% of the monarch butterfly population over the last 30 years it's declined that much, 80 to 90%. So what keeps me up at night is rain and climate change, and so it keeps me up at night. It's just shocking what's been happening now. You've seen our 24-hour, 100-year rainfall depth go from 6 inches 50 years ago to over 8.5 inches today. That's very significant. We've seen in the past few years, we've had federally declared disaster areas here in the Chicagoland area. These caused by storms where an incredible deluge of water falls in a very short period of time. It's devastating to our residents. And then when we look at biodiversity, how does all that affect biodiversity? So we have increased rainfall, you have increased chance for flash flooding, you have increased chances of erosion issues that are direct stressors to biodiversity. So there's a lot that comes with that. And what gives me hope is that we work with so many different partners, from non-governmental organizations to governmental agencies to municipalities to developing stormwater management projects. We've got a variety of stormwater management projects that range from flood control reservoirs. All the reservoirs put online last year in that reservoir. The purpose of that is to hold flood water and release it slowly after conditions subside. And then that helps with flooding, obviously, but it also helps with biodiversity. But then we have green infrastructure projects. In the program, there's been well over 200 different projects that are either green infrastructure projects or those larger regional types of projects that we've put in over the last 15 years or already design. The beauty of the green infrastructure projects, and you know what those are, permeable pavement, the green alley projects that we do, those types of projects help infiltrate water where it falls and keeps it out of the sewer system. And that keeps it out of people's homes. And that will certainly And I think the theme that I expect will continue with the rest of this conversation is the collaboration. That gives me hope also. There is a great deal of collaboration that goes into all the efforts.
Very good. I hope I see some business cards get exchanged at some point. Adam, this question's for you. You know, managing stressed ecosystems is already a challenge. How are you managing for the additional challenges posed by climate change?
Yeah, the Forest Preserves manages over 70,000 acres. And so we really had to figure out and look at climate change more through the lens of how we manage everything than versus just a separate issue on its own. Climate change really is something that makes all of our existing challenges, it just amplifies it, right? Whether that's the intensity and the challenges we have with beating back the buckthorn and the invasive species to the ways that we're seeing areas we've already planned out to mitigate for flooding or stormwater that sort of spill over and cause issues for our communities, right? We are constantly looking at ways of how we can sort of look at these ecosystems to be more resilient, right? Not sort of go back to our traditional sense and look at our restoration as a moment in time, but continue to be adaptive. Really looking across boundaries at scale across landscapes. That's really important when you think about climate change and how we can sort of do our best to make these landscapes resilient, not just by NWRD land or park district land or individual watersheds, but across the entire landscape. The challenge also, I think, with climate change is really making things more difficult in our traditional tools that we have when it comes to managing and restoring these spaces. I'm as someone who's traditionally been out west in my career, constantly dealing with wildfire and the impacts. And I was so pleased to come here and understand that there's a really great culture already that's built in prescribed fire across the landscapes here. But it's really challenging for everything to line up with wind directions, smoke, have least impacts on the communities and road infrastructure. It's more and more climate is causing issues to be able for us to find those windows, for us to be really proactive in how we're managing these ecosystems. Again, back at that landscape scale, right? I mentioned the buckthorn. It's like some days I feel like we are the Forest Preserves District of Cook County, and our job is strictly buckthorn, right? Like, it is one of those things where, from volunteers, Conservation Corps, my staff, it is a labor of love and it's a constant feedback. But that's a challenge, right? It is something that climate change also is providing these spaces and opportunities for invasive species and in other ways that our management is way more intensive than it's ever had to be in order just to sort of continue to keep that foothold. And so into the future, I really think, right, in order for us to be resilient, it's thinking about modeling and projecting out what climate is maybe telling us, not just taking the historic data, but really trying to be proactive and thinking in the future. Thinking about our species diversity. And I'll say not only species diversity, but age class diversity and structure diversity. When I walk through the forest preserves as a silviculturist and a forester, what we're lacking is structure diversity. We're lacking a lot of it when it comes to our age class diversity. We're doing a really good job at thinking decadent, old, big oak trees. But if you walk through, you can realize that we don't have anything when it comes to our regeneration, to our sapling stage. We're struggling to get any light to the forest floor or plants and forbs and other things. And so that is all exacerbated, I think, when it comes to climate. It's really hindering our biodiversity and what we're getting for our structure and our class diversity too. So for me, that's a big emphasis. I come into this role is thinking broader than just restoring our prairie plants. I'm really looking at the woodland ecosystems because I think there is an opportunity there that is sort of, there's a gap that we have. The other thing I would say is thinking practically. We mentioned working across lines, working together collaboratively, but we really got to think about the costs associated with these restoration efforts. Things are only going up. We only have so much fun and opportunity. We have to figure out how we're prioritizing to make the biggest impact. And that necessarily isn't about the acres treated. It's about the important acres. Where are we doing it? Why are we doing it? Are we being strategic enough for the future? Those are the things that I think about when it comes about climate, and always constantly looking at that lens of how we're managing it in the future.
All right. Carlos, this one's up next. This one up next is for you. Biodiversity depends on more opportunities for quality good connectivity, right? And so from your perspective, how do we get there and what role does the Forest District play in that?
So the Park District plays an incredibly important role, and the role that it plays has increased year after year, thanks to lots of intentionality, a lot of advocacy, and a lot of partnership. So as I mentioned earlier, we don't quite have the 70,000 acres of the Forest Preserve of Cook County, but we steward 9,000 acres in Chicago, largest landowner in the city of Chicago proper. And thanks to a lot of collective effort, over the last several decades, 2,000 of those acres are now natural areas, where we're doing marshland restoration, prairie restoration, and really supporting important habitats. And when some of those first natural areas were rolled out, community said, what the heck is this, right? Where's my nice, green grass? These look like weeds. So it's taken a lot of public education to inform people that actually that is what this area looked like before, we came into the city here. And that this is critically important if we want to support planet Earth. And we're so proud that because of the work that's happened, particularly in the far south side of Chicago, in places like Big Marsh Park, we are now seeing the return of migratory species in ways that we have not seen in our lifetimes. And that is amazing, to take places that were previously a scar on the earth where human activity had caused so much harm, and to be able to restore that back, to be able to bring it back to what it once was so that it can serve everyone. We are committed to seeing that work through. One of the things that I'm really proud of to have accomplished during my tenure is the work to transform 43 acres at Calumet Harbor from a disposal facility into a future park. So as many of you know, the Army Corps of Engineers, which has an important task of keeping our waterways navigable, for the past 4 decades, has dredged the Calumet Harbor and then deposited that waste material in the Calumet Confined Disposal Facility, which is basically like a pool with like these big steel and concrete walls. And then over the past 40 years, they have dumped the material in there until we have a new piece of land. So that facility started to reach its full capacity in about 2022. And the Army Corps, which had committed for decades to the community that once they were done with this process, it would be turned over to the Park District to be turned into a new lakefront public park, instead said, hey, guess what? We want a vertical expansion and we want to keep dumping here for the next 40 years. Sorry, community, you're not going to get a park. You're going to continue to get some nasty stuff dumped on your doorstep. And so the community organized, Howard Lerner, the LPC, and others filed suit. And thanks to a lot of hard work by a lot of great people, that decision was reversed. And the Army Corps withdrew their record of decision, basically saying this is not moving forward. But there was still an open question, right? Will this become a park? When will it become a park? So thanks to the historic tax increment financing surplus that the Park District received through Mayor Brandon Johnson, we were able to allocate money to actually start the park planning process. And this past fall, surrounded by community, we announced park number 608, because we name our parks, we number them before we name them. So we're up to number 608, and that is going to be a 43-acre park along the lakefront. And we're looking forward to do a lot of the same great work that we've done in Big Marsh Park at the Park 608 as well. We also are really big on environmental education. We're really proud that in each of the 3 regions of the Chicago Park District, North, Central, and South, we have a center where we're able to educate the public, from little ones to a little bit older ones, and every age in between. And we have that at North Park Village, which is another great success story of advocacy, right, to get that space to be a place for the community. We have one at Northerly Island, another great success story of people taking action, maybe sometimes at the dead of night, to keep that as a place for the public to enjoy. And then we have one, of course, in the Calumet region. So at Big Marsh Park, and that's the Fort Calumet Center. So all of those 3 centers help interpret the natural area for the people of the city of Chicago, help educate them. And I think we want to continue to build upon that. So I'm really big in hiking, and we have so many natural areas, but we don't have like one. You all do a great job with Forest Preserve, right? Those pamphlets that they put out and those maps that they have, we don't do as great of a job at the Park District. So I think that's one thing we're towards in the future to just really help people understand these are the 2,000 acres of natural area in the city of Chicago, and here's how you can enjoy them, and here's the important role that they play.
Yeah, great. John, I'm coming to you. MWRD conducts these year-round fish monitoring projects showing that there's a steady improvement in biodiversity since the 1970s. I mean, Austin Apple's like right there, and we did a lot of that. But how does MWRD see its role in advancing biodiversity today?
So I'm going to comment a little bit about the increase in fish species, right? It's really a remarkable achievement. 10 different fish species back in 1974 and over 70 today. And that's just absolutely amazing. It does show that, through long-term monitoring and investment, that you can make ecological changes, make improvements. And the big driver, one of the big drivers behind that was the tunnel and reservoir. This large public project that we partnered with the Army Corps of Engineers on. I know everyone's probably familiar with it, but I just find it fascinating how successful it's been. The size of it, these 30-foot diameter tunnels, 300 feet underground with these large reservoirs where we capture combined sewer flow. We billions and billions of gallons of it, and then we otherwise would be going into waterways or going into people's basements, creating all kinds of biodiversity concerns. And it's just fascinating. And all of that water that we collect, we treat. So I find it a great project. I know that we're all happy with the benefits that it provides. So when I look ahead, it's we have to manage our land responsibly, continue to do that. 80% of our land, 4,000 acres that we own outside of our facilities, is for public release, for public recreation. Partner with the Forest Reserve District, we partner with Chicago District, and many other entities. And that open space is important. So we need to continue to maintain our lands responsibly. At our plants, we have over 50 acres of native prairie landscape that previously was turf grass. That is a habitat opportunity. We're capturing stormwater there. We have a couple dozen acres of milkweed plants that help with monarch butterflies that we talked about earlier. So we got to continue to do that. We got to continue to look to expand within our own footprint. But again, we need to continue to work with these other agencies and non-governmental organizations to continue to move things forward. We have a very large project that we're working with the Forest Reserve District on. It's going to be out in Glenwood area, Fort Heights area. That's going to be flood storage. It's going to have recreational benefits, and it's going to have ecological benefits. And those are the types of projects we want to be involved in. And when we look at all the projects we do, we're looking for multiple benefits. And I think that the relationship that we've been able to form with the Forest Reserve District, where we've been able to work together and accomplish mutual objectives, has been very, very beneficial to both agencies. And our enabling legislation said we could not build projects on forest preserve property without coming to some terms and figuring out ways to do it so it benefits all of us. So we built the project out Palos Heights, the other one we mentioned. I just think the future is bright, and I think we just all have to keep everything together.
John, I actually have a follow-up for you, which is a couple of years ago, MWRD put out this climate assessment, and in it, one of the things that they hoped would happen by 2030 is that you guys would have some carbon credits up and running for biodiversity and some other stuff too. Is that still part of the plan?
So we have it's still on the table. When that was put into place, we understood that is a evolving idea, and that there was still a study that had to take place with that. And carbon sequestration is a very important thing. And so what we need to do, though, we're working with universities, and we're working with other agencies, and we're working with the Water Research Foundation to help develop what that could become. So it's still on the table. We're not quite there yet, but we're working towards it.
Sure. Margaret, this one's for you. You know, when it comes to building biodiversity and connecting habitat, what do you see as the role of community organizations in accomplishing these long-term goals, working alongside, public bodies and municipalities?
So I've been thinking about that all week. And I think it's a couple different things, the different roles. So I'd say we're advocates, we're activists, we're allies, and we're entrepreneurs. And so as advocates, we really work through public policy and look at water quality standards and what are the rules and regulations, what are the expected norms, and kind of follow the rules and go. The long-term systemic change comes from the Clean Water Act, comes from the Endangered Species Act, and all of these ways that we can, the state of Illinois guarantees the people of the state clean water. So using those terms and conditions. But as activists, it's a little bit different because certainly for years as working on water quality standards, if the permits aren't good enough, but you're meeting the permits, someone needs to be pushing for better permits, and that might not be the purview of the agency. So an activist is out there saying, well, what else can we do? How could we do better? And how do we build public support for what we're trying to see? So I think arguably the Chicago-Calumet river system, it took a lot of activists to get to the point where someone said, hey, a continuous river trail is a great idea, because people didn't want that. They didn't want to get near the river. It was polluted, it was fenced off, and it didn't seem important. So you have to change people's minds. And one of the ways we do that is we have 46,000 people who are part of our social media community. We have Chicago River Day, which keeps breaking records. Last year, 92 sites, 2,400 volunteers. I heard people today wanting to add new sites in that wherever you are. But also things like this, bringing the people together in River Summit. That's about activism. That's not the public policy piece. That's waking up people. Doug who's here with the Chicago River Swim. We had a swimming summit, and out of that swimming summit in 2017, we started doing the big jump. And we had elected officials jumping in the river with us at Pingtown Memorial Park to go, look, you can put people in the water. It's okay. We won't die. It's way cleaner than you think it is. So that's activism, right? And then as allies working with these agencies, working with developers, working with private landowners, just how can we help you? How do we partner with each one of these agencies in really important ways and have dreamed up big ideas and with the Greater Chicago Watershed Alliance, which is an alliance of now 55 partners around increasing the use of nature-based green infrastructure. We couldn't have done it without the Water Reclamation District. That was the first call I made was, would you work with us? And they said, absolutely, we will. And so in 2020, we were able to start because they were willing, in Lake County Stormwater Management as well. Like those two agencies needed to be part of it. And what they've done and what they've added has been instrumental. And the Forest Preserve is part of it, the Park District is part of it, CMAP is part of it, Open Lands is part of it, the Trust for Public Lands, it goes on and on. Private entities. And so again, coordinating and looking, but it's the activism and the ally piece. And then finally, I think the last piece is entrepreneurs, right? So we're always looking for something new. What's next? Our mission is Friends' mission is to protect and restore the Chicago-Calumet River system, its tributary streams, and that takes watershed thinking. And so you always have to be looking for what's new and what's possible. And as John points out, the tunnel and reservoir plan, there's benchmarks, and Austin from the shed here knows, you can see these jumps in fish populations. And it's not just the species of fish, it's the abundance of fish, it's the health of the fish. So it's way different, and the whole entire aquatic ecosystem is much, much stronger. So as the water quality improved, we started to look at how there was less habitat that needed to be there. So we started doing all these habitat projects with the Department of Natural Resources, and we've invented channel catfish nesting cavities. Male channel catfish actually need like a place in the riverbank or a submerged log, and they guard the eggs until they hatch. And so if there's no submerged logs, there's no place to guard the eggs. They just go downstream, right? So we invented that. There's 400 in the river system. We've done turtle habitat restoration in the forest preserve, and in locations where turtles could not nest at all. And there's a huge predation rate because the mesopredators know where the turtles lay their eggs. They eat the eggs, they eat the baby turtles. Instead, we created new places, and we had a 60% increase in turtle nesting success. So really, demonstrable change because of this entrepreneurial idea. What can we do? What can we do? And one of those are projects really close to my heart. And this year, we put up a bunch of osprey nests also in the forest preserves. And one of the Botanic Garden, the scientists at the Forest Preserve District of the county this year was able to ban one of the fledglings. So we have our own nest with our own osprey with the band. And if If they're a female, they'll come back here and nest in the region, and if they're a male, they'll go somewhere else following a female after a couple of years in the south. And so someday we're going to likely see band number XQ475 turn up because of the entrepreneurial ideas of going, let's demonstrate to people what's possible by doing this work and working with these allies and pushing through public policy and activism.
Great. I've got one last question for you guys. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to answer this. And then we're pretty much wrapping, go to Q&A. But, I want to start with you, John. Biodiversity provides many benefits to people. How do we ensure those benefits are equitably distributed in our region?
So I start with Lake Michigan, right? So the founding of this agency was to protect the broader environment. That's the source of our drinking water, Lake Michigan. And we've done that very well through our work. And I'm going to add a little bit about the tunnel and reservoir plan. I appreciate everything you said, Margaret. In essence, on the south side of the city in the Calumet area, CSO has been virtually eliminated. And that helps so much in so many ways. So the lake through Chicago Park District, recreational benefits, the lake is available to everyone, and that's a great thing. And when I look at our service area, which covers almost the entire county, over 93% of the county, we have a responsibility to distribute our projects in our services as best as we can. And if I had a map here today that showed you where all of the stormwater projects are located, there's dots all over spread throughout the entire county. And we have an environmental justice group. One of the engineers, or an engineer that works in that group, her name is Lolita Thompson, and she worked at our stormwater management program, and now she works in environmental justice. But she serves as a liaison between our stormwater staff and the communities. And so she does a lot of work trying to help coordinate projects. And so when we go to, we have different buckets that we look at when we're funding stormwater management projects. And one of them was where we go to help communities that may not have an engineering staff or the funding to hire consultants to do that work. And we learn of the flooding problems that they have. We try to look for solutions, and then we design projects and bring them to construction. So there's a lot of different ways that we make sure that we're spreading our work equitably throughout the county. And through the many different partnerships that we've discussed before. And also, when I think of the different projects, we have a Space to Grow project that we do, where we're transforming parking lots at Chicago Public Schools with the Department of Water Management and the Chicago Public Schools. And this is put together originally through an organization by Open Lands. That's been a wildly successful project, capturing almost 8 million gallons of stormwater. So it's the capacity of that is there. So there's just a lot of ways that we're doing it, and we're always open to exploring new partnerships. So that's my answer.
Great. Adam, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So Forest Preserve's mission really has twin aims, right? It's about nature and people. And I think when it comes to environmental justice, piece, it's so fitting that it kind of aligns with our mission, because just really understanding that conservation not only is for nature, but really is about that well-being and benefit of people. And I have to give credit to my predecessors, and Arnold Randall, Evan Fiegel, and of course, President John Preckwick, when she came into office, really started to emphasize the need for the forest preserves to think broader and how we are connecting with communities. We've kind of a green ring, if you will, when you look at our land and our holdings around the city. We are predominantly kind of on the outskirts and in suburbs. We try really hard to find ways for us to be able to go to where people are at. And so we really try to, not only in our the work that we do, but we're trying to bring conservation education to areas also to help sort of understand the need and what the forest preserves nature can do for communities. We've got this Wellness in the Woods program that really focuses on those health benefits. I think are fantastic. They really provide opportunities for us to get folks to the zoo or to the garden or to a lot of our amenities and programming. But when it comes to actual sort of management of the land and work, we've been focusing on areas that I think traditionally have been left behind. We have a piece of property that I was really proud of when I first got here in Beaubien Woods that is right next to Elk Gardens, which is really the birthplace of the environmental justice movement. And it was fantastic, just sort of microcosm of the work we're trying to accomplish there. We invested heavily with that community to understand what their needs are, and then really help design and figure out ways to sort of meet that. What it looks like is cleaning up a lot of the risk, restoring the waterway along the Calumet there, providing additional fishing piers and opportunities. There is accessibility, boat launches and kayak launches, new comfort restroom facilities, picnic groves, a new trail system. We purchased new land adjacent in a deal with CTA, the Red Line extension, to purchase some additional land that will connect us to that housing division as well. It's for connectivity. We've got restoration that kind of expand outside of that. And so that's a good example, I think, of just ways that we try to think holistically with those communities and connect with them, so ensuring that we're meeting their needs. It is interesting, right? North, south, east to west, every community is different here. It's makes my job challenging, but really, really rewarding. We really try to focus to understand what those communities' needs are. And I think that's ultimately, at the end of the day, what's really important. County just came out with its environmental justice framework, and that's in the Department of Environmental and Sustainability. I think it's a great high-level area to look and to think about, are we meeting those needs? And when I look at it, I think we are. I think the Port Surgeon did a great job. Obviously, a lot of opportunity and room for improvement. John mentioned the project working on together, kind of that Third Creek area, and I think it'll be hopefully designed in a way that not only meets the joining with MWRD's needs and forest preserves, but I think also for the community, we think about the recreation amenities and facilities. So it's really important. What makes this place unique, I mean, this place in Cook County, is that this intertwine between, you can't take nature out of this community, and vice versa. People have inherently are intertwined in nature. And so we can't separate that. And it's really important for me as the medical superintendent to recognize and meet those communities where they're at.
Okay, Carlos?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is so asinine that this federal administration has sought to turn diversity, equity, and inclusion into bad words. And at the Park District, we are not backing down off of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are doubling down on our efforts. One of the ways that we are doing that is through a program called Chicago Grows Together. So we have a little itty bitty capital budget of about 30 to 35 million per year, depending on how much we bond in any given year. And most of that goes to maintenance. And so that means that in order to do new projects, new exciting things, we have to look towards other resources, whether those be federal, state, or local. And the biggest local resource that we have are tax increment financing districts. But I don't have to tell you all here what that does, right? If you are in a well-resourced area that has a very nice TIF, that has very nice properties there feeding into that TIF, then you've got a lot of money to do a lot of great things in that. But if you are in a community primarily on the south or west side where there isn't a TIF with a lot of money, then you may not see investment that other parks are seeing. So this year, the Park District received a record 45 million in tax increment financing surplus funds, thanks to Mayor Brandon Johnson. And this is the first time ever that we've used that TIF surplus to actually fund park improvements. And we're doing that through the Chicago Grows Together Fund. So those dollars cannot be used in communities that already have TIFs, where those parks are receiving TIF dollars. It has to be spent in historically disinvested communities. And that's just one way that we're making sure that we are advancing parks for all. What we're also seeking to do is make equity into everything that we do. So we have been working to roll out the new heat vulnerability index for the city of Chicago. And when we are making critical decisions, because our parks are critical to cool, right? Ecologically, they play a role in cooling. But also, if you are in your home and it's a hot summer day, guess what? Your field house should be a cooling center. That pool, we have 77 pools. That pool is for you to cool down. We have 26 miles of lakefront, 23 beaches. By the way, we manage more miles of beaches than New York or Los Angeles, and those are coastal cities. And we also have the largest municipal aquatics program in the nation, with more lifeguards per capita, almost 2 or 3 times what New York or Los Angeles have. And so those are part of the city's cooling strategy, not even to mention our 100+ splash pads. But we also know that sometimes difficult decisions have to be made. And so we use the heat vulnerability index to guide those decisions. And one way that we're doing that, again, thanks to this tax increment financing, is we are going to roll out AC improvements and upgrades in Chicago's most heat vulnerable communities. My good friend, Commissioner Angela Tovar from the Department of the Environment, she invited me out to an event on the heat vulnerability index that's rolled out, and that was at Columbus Park Refectory, one of our beautiful Jensen parks on the west side. And they talked about the terrible heat wave in 1995 that tragically killed hundreds of people. And they talked about the new work that they're doing to develop a heat vulnerability index in tandem with the community. And one thing that I learned is that the community that's been working on this updated heat vulnerability index is that one of the top things they want the city to do to respond to heat is they want to have community centers that are air conditioned where the community can go to. I said, well, we have field houses. That's kind of like what the community is envisioning. So we're working to update our field houses so that they can be a place for people to cool down. But also, ultimately, we don't just want them to be inside the field house. We want them to also be outside, right? Enjoying our beautiful canopy, enjoying those beautiful breezes. So yeah, I think at the Chicago Park District, we are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. In every single way, we just updated our policies as well as it relates to gender inclusivity to make sure that we are protecting our gender diverse community and that our staff know what our policy is and how to protect our gender diverse community. And then lastly, I'll go back to Project Monarch because it's a passion of mine. So we rolled it out with the Park Advisory Council leaders at our PAC conference in April of last year. We then expanded it to aldermen in the fall, where we informed our local city officials about the importance of milkweed, how they can plant milkweed, how they can get their community involved in planting and stewarding milkweed. This summer, we're going to roll it out to all 25,000 day campers. So I want all of our day campers to know what milkweed looks like. And I will be so happy when one day, one of our day campers goes to their mom and says, don't cut that down, right? Or goes to their friend and says, don't kick that plant because there's milkweed growing there. And that's critically important to the monarch butterfly. So we want to make our environment, ecology, accessible to everyone in the city of Chicago.
Well, that's outrageous. Margaret, do you want to wrap us up?
Sure, thank you. So I think, at Friends, we too are committed to all of the people that live in our watershed, and that's expressed in our mission that we're protecting and restoring the Chicago-Calumet river system for all people, water, and wildlife. And there's a lot of ways to do that, and couple of the ways we've really been focused in more recent years is making sure that everybody's voice is at the table. So under the administration of former Mayor Rahm Emanuel, Friends was instrumental in launching what the River Ecology and Governance Task Force. It's, I don't know if the right word is housed in the Department of Planning and Development for the City of Chicago, but it was the first time that community groups had a voice in a sanctioned forum where there was discussions about what was happening in the riverfront in their communities. So, I don't know, 7 years later, whatever it is, this is a really active group, and Adam Flickinger, our planning director, is a partner in facilitating it. And together, he a group of the partners actually received a $2.7 million community change grant. And the idea was that Friends passed through federal money to frontline community groups so that they could do planning using this formal umbrella of the Department of Planning for the City of Chicago to make things happen in their communities. Unfortunately, the federal administration took the money back. That's a whole long story. If anyone's around for happy hour, some of us like to talk about it a lot because it was quite a process. But it was a way of demonstrating that we want to listen to people, to give them a voice of what's happening, where they live, and that people get to choose what happens. And as you know, as this come up, people are really, across the region, people value wildlife, but they also we're working to really help people understand that natural areas are good for our public health, our mental wellness, and that biodiversity, that rich biodiversity is actually benefiting humans too. So it's core to our messaging. Another piece that I wanted to mention was that the Greater Chicago Watershed Alliance, which I mentioned earlier, through leadership by the Trust for Public Land, was able to develop something called the Natural Solutions Tool. And this is this massive GIS tool that has hundreds of data layers organized around 5 modeling objectives that include public health, include equity, biodiversity, resiliency, and greenway connectivity. And you can actually, I don't know what the final number is, because now it's expanded to all across Lake County. But when it was started, it was 1.4 million parcels. We know exactly how they score in these 5 modeling objectives. So you could look at the top 10 forest preserves and say, which ones score 5 out of 5? And we should be doing work that will benefit all of these pieces. And it's got particulate air pollution in it. It's got remnant oak savannas, and so it links it all together into one idea. This is one system. They're not separate buckets. It's all one. And then the last thing I'll mention is something that we're really gearing up on right now, which is the under-imagined and explored Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. Some people will be aware that in the last year, we've done a renaming campaign, and the campaign is wrapped up. We have a name that we're going to work on this formal federal application to change the name, because we think sanitary doesn't suit in the 21st century. And there's so much life there, but there's also so much opportunity. There's 13 municipalities, and they range from towns that have massive master plans and have done a lot of thinking, like Lamont's historic downtown. If you've been there lately, we just were there Monday of this week, and would had this great meal in a local restaurant that's owned by people who live in the town. Just magic. And on the other side of the river, there's industry. But in between there and downtown Chicago, there are trails, there are fish, there in the invasive carp barrier. If you go there in a boat, which I've done a couple of times, or go by on the trails, you see multiple species of fish-eating birds who are like, well, this made our job easy, and expressing new behaviors and diving to catch fish that they didn't used to do, or do, and not in urbanized areas. So the goal is really bringing the communities, and we've already done some community outreach, and we're allowing that we would have this redefining process and helping to synthesize what kinds of plans have been done. The communities don't even have planning departments. So like John mentioned, the MWRD will go in and help. And so that's what we're trying to do, is say, how do we help you? How do we bring the resources of these other communities? And we look at this from an environmental point of view, an ecosystem point of view, an environmental and an economic point of view, but also a public health and connectivity point of view. How does your place get to be the place you want to live in the way you want to live there? And so that's something that we're wrapping up this framework plan by September, and we'll continue to meet with the municipal partners. But again, it's just making sure that we're creating spaces where the voices can come to the table, where people can talk about their own lives, their own needs, and make sure that everyone else that's making decisions is taking that into account and placing value on it.
Great. You guys, thank you so much for doing this today. This was great. So we kind of ran through the Q&A. Do we have time for a couple questions anymore? Okay, one question. Really make it count. Pressure. But if we answered everything, I mean, that's good too. I'm not taking any questions. No hands. Oh, I do see.
Since you mentioned the sanitary ship canal, I've noticed, like, I live in the southwest suburbs, and I come in to the city sometimes on that route, and I walk from the Forest Preserve District on the Des Plaines River where there's gold. But I also noticed there's a lot of trash facilities, like very close to that waterway. And I was just wondering, from, a big picture zoning standpoint, is there work being done to try to, is it necessary for those facilities to be on the canal for how they move trash and waste? Or is there an effort to try to rezone and move some of those facilities away from the water? And how much pollution is seeping into, our waterways from those facilities?
So that is a really terrific question that I can't really give you a full answer on. So what our planning team has been doing, and literally went out and drove, trying to get to the canal everywhere they could, the whole the 28 miles. It's worth just coming to Fred's office to watch the presentation. It's like they were spelunking in a dark cave. It was just wild to listen to them to describe how hard it is to get anywhere. These weird roads, some of them are privatized, even though they show on Google Maps that they're public. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And so what we're starting with is really trying to understand what's there and how it's being used. So we're not at a point where we're recommending anything, and the partners are very interested in economics, and there's a lot of really important businesses that use the river, and it's core to their industry. So it's trying to we're just starting with what's there and how is it working now, and from there, that's where the policy questions will come from and the policy answer. So I can't be more specific, but we're trying to get to some place where then we can really have an conversation about.
I mean, I made a wrong turn once trying to get to a boat launch, and that's kind of how I discovered there was like a giant trash facility, and I was like, it's kind of sad, like there's a river and there's like this giant trash facility right now.
Right, and it could be that is something that makes sense to move in the future, and that I'm not commenting now just because we don't even really understand the breadth of all of the opportunities, but like this connection, one of the slides that Amy and Anna pulled together is this connection between the displays, the sanitary ship canal and the I&M canal, and where there's water, where there's not, where there's trails. And like you just see there, the 15,000 acres of Palos and Waterfall Glen in DuPage County, which like just jumps down a little bit and touches the canal, but is one of the most extraordinary places you could ever go. So it's a really interesting mix of people living there and billions of dollars of commerce, and then this biodiversity lens and this environmental health lens that we're trying to look at all together.